Okay, so let's dive into one of the most incredible places on the entire planet, the Grand Canyon. And trust me, it's way more than just a giant, beautiful hole in the ground. This place, it tells an epic story, a story that's literally carved in stone over an unimaginable amount of time. So, to really wrap your head around just how massive this place is, get this. At its deepest point, the Grand Canyon is over a mile straight down. I mean, seriously, try to picture that. It's like stacking more than 4 Empire State Buildings, one on top of the other, just to get from the river at the bottom all the way to the rim. Okay, so seeing that incredible scale, you have to ask the big question, right? How on earth did this giant hole get here? I mean, it obviously wasn't here forever, so what kind of force could possibly create something this huge? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out. All right, first stop in our investigation. And you might think we'd start at the bottom, but actually the clues begin right here in these incredible, colorful, striped walls. They're holding the first secrets to how this whole thing came to be. Here's the best way to think about it. The canyon's walls are basically the pages of a giant history book. Seriously, each one of those distinct layers of rock is a different page, telling a story from a totally different chapter in Earth's history. The oldest pages, they're way down at the bottom, and the newest ones are up here at the top. And the people who can actually read this book, well, they're called geologists. You can think of them as scientific detectives. Their job is to study these rock layers to piece together exactly what our planet was like millions or even billions of years ago. And what these geologists have found is, well, it's mind-blowing. The rocks at the very, very bottom of the Grand Canyon, they're almost 2 billion years old. Let that sink in. 2 billion. That's nearly half the age of our entire planet. And its history is just laid out right there for us to see. Okay, so this is where the story takes a really surprising turn. Because by studying those rock layers, geologists found out a huge secret. This whole area, which is now a super dry desert in Arizona, it was once covered by deep oceans and vast swamps. So how in the world could they possibly know that? The answer comes down to one thing: fossils. And a fossil is basically just the preserved remains of ancient life. Plants, animals, you name it. They're like these little snapshots from the past that have slowly turned into stone over millions of years, locking in the evidence of what used to live there. So, what kind of clues did they find? Well, in some layers of rock, they found the fossils of tiny shells from sea creatures. That's a dead giveaway that a deep ocean used to be here. Then, in other layers, they've discovered the actual fossilized footprints of ancient reptiles that once walked across sandy dunes. And they've even found impressions of leaves and ferns from lush green forests that are now long gone. Okay, so we've got our giant layer cake, right? Billions of years of rock stacked one on top of the other. But that's only part of the puzzle. Now we have to figure out what carved this massive canyon out of that cake. I mean, seriously, what kind of force is powerful enough to slice through a mile of solid rock? It had to be something unbelievably strong and something that just never, ever stopped working away for a very, very long time. And the answer? It's actually pretty simple but unbelievably powerful. The Colorado River. Yep, that ribbon of water you see way down at the bottom, that's the master sculptor responsible for all of this. The river does its work through a process called erosion. It's a key idea in geology. Basically, as the water rushes downstream, it's not just water. It picks up tons of sand, silt, and even small rocks, and all that stuff turns the river into this incredibly powerful cutting tool. This is probably the best way to picture it. Imagine the river is like a giant, flowing piece of sandpaper. All those little bits of rock and sand in the water are constantly grinding away at the canyon walls and floor. It's a slow process, for sure, but when it happens day after day for millions and millions of years, well, you get the Grand Canyon. So, if you put it all together, the canyon's creation is really a two-part story. Part 1, for almost 2 billion years, you had ancient seas and environments laying down all these different layers of rock. Part 2, then around 6 million years ago, the Colorado River showed up and started its long, slow journey of carving down through all of it. And believe it or not, that process of erosion is still happening right now, making the canyon just a tiny bit deeper every single year. But the Grand Canyon isn't just about old rocks and water. It's a living, breathing place. In fact, it's kind of like a world within a world, or maybe several worlds stacked right on top of each other. because the environment changes so dramatically as you go from the top all the way down to the bottom. The difference is just wild. Up at the rim, it's a totally different climate. It can be cool, you get forests of pine and oak trees, and even feet of snow in the winter. But then, you go 1 mile straight down to the floor and bam, you're in a scorching hot desert. We're talking temperatures over 100 degrees in the summer, where only the toughest plants like cacti and shrubs can make it. And with all these different climates, you get an amazing variety of wildlife. You've got bighorn sheep, these incredible climbers, just hanging out on the steepest cliffs. If you look up, you might see a California condor, one of the biggest birds in the world, soaring high above. Then you have deer wandering through the cooler forests up top. And of course, down in the heat, you've got classic desert animals like rattlesnakes and scorpions. So we've talked about the rocks and the animals, but there's another huge part of the canyon's story. The human story, because people have been connected to this incredible place for thousands and thousands of years. It's been a home for a very long time. Way back, for thousands of years, Native American tribes like the Havasupai have lived in and around the canyon. It's a sacred place for them. Then, fast forward to 1540, and the first Spanish explorers showed up. But it really wasn't until 1869 when a guy named John Wesley Powell led this super famous, super dangerous scientific expedition down the river that the rest of the country really started paying attention. And today? Well, today it's a national park that millions of people from all over the globe come to see. And all of this, it leads us to a really important final thought. A place this special, this ancient, it's not just some tourist spot. It's a global treasure. And that means we all have a responsibility to help protect it. So how do we do that? Well, it's really a team effort. You've got the National Park Service, who are like the guardians of the land. You've got scientists who are constantly monitoring the health of the river and the wildlife. And every single person who visits plays a part, just by following simple rules like staying on the trails and not leaving any trash behind. Even stuff like limiting the noise from airplanes and helicopters helps keep the canyon peaceful and wild. When you think about it, the Grand Canyon is more than just a place. It's a living storybook of our planet, a masterpiece that took nature millions of years to sculpt. So the final question is really for all of us. Since it took millions of years to create, what do we need to do to make sure it's protected for millions of years to come?